Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is holistic grief counsellor Gemma Kyriakou, and we're going to be talking about how to manage the grief and loss of a parent. Welcome to the program, Gemma.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
Everyone has a different approach to grief. How can we help people in this journey?
The grief is a natural human response to the passing of a loved one. The death of a parent is probably one of the most significant losses that you will encounter. We lose our safety net when a parent dies, or both parents. And safety is a primal, basic human need. And when we lose that safety, it's often replaced with a fear, which is often anxiety, that comes out as anxiety. So everyone manages and copes differently with grief. Some people become withdrawn, some people very expressive, a lot of anger, and everything is validated. Everything that you feel, every emotion is important to express and feel in order to process. I would always suggest when a parent passes to reach out and speak to a trusted friend or your siblings, to keep the lines of communication open so there are no misunderstandings or grievances.
You say that everyone approaches grief differently. Does that extend to different family members? And if so, what are the consequences?
The consequences of a parent passing, especially when both parents have passed, as if there are, for example, minors and there are small children now left without their parents. This adds such another layer of emotional, extreme stress for the people that are left behind. When my mother passed away when I was 20, my sister was only 7, and her dad really wasn't in the picture at that time. So I was left with not a great support system, and having to navigate all the legal complexities and go through the correct channels in what was going to happen to, my sister that was only 7 years old, which added an extreme amount of pressure to myself that was only 20 years old and really didn't know how to navigate that.
Can grief be shown in physical and emotional symptoms?
Yes, absolutely, they can. You hold a lot of tension when you're grieving. That's a natural response. So that might result in headaches and migraines, especially if you're predisposed. Being tense in the back area, which will result in soreness, muscle tension, which is often a sign of, not feeling supported in that time of your life. Grief is very much held in the lungs. So that will come across with shortness of breath. That will show up as anxiety. That will show up as a panic attack, for example, when it's really just an intense stored emotion that needs to be released and it's trying to come out. With the anxiety, this is a very common symptom of the passing of a loved one because of such of the unknown of what is now going to come into your life. And if we don't keep on top of the anxiety, then we can start coming into depression. So it's very important to start recognizing what you're feeling and to reach out to people to keep those lines of communication open so we don't spiral and we don't go into a depression. So depression, it's a very common side effect of the passing of a loved one, especially a parent. There's so much unknown. So with depression, it may show up as self-isolation. It will show up as intrusive thoughts, lack of motivation, really just wanting to hide away, and just a lack of interest in life in general, which it can be quite normal in a short term. But if this prolongs, this is when we need to seek out professional help and guidance. There can be cultural expectations and cultural consequences with the passing of a parent. Many cultures, religions require things to be done systematically, and now the siblings that are left behind may not necessarily agree with that. Also, with cultural expectations, it's not the done thing to be expressive or talk about how you're feeling. I think what is most important here is to acknowledge the person that has passed and recognise exactly what they would have wanted. And we have to leave our ego and our own personal beliefs at the door and recognise the person that's passed, what they would have wanted for themselves in this moment. Again, very important to recognise those feelings and recognise those emotions and seek advice and guidance from, a trusted friend or a professional.
Talking about advice, what advice would you give to people dealing with grief?
My advice for anyone dealing with grief is to, one, be kind to yourself. It really is a time where you need to allow yourself a lot of grace, recognize and feel into the emotions and the feelings that you are feeling in your body. We want to stop these feelings from being trapped and stored because they can manifest. We want to help release them for our overall mental and physical well-being. So absolutely consult a friend. It really is about keeping the lines of communication open because we can self-isolate. We can just hide away. And that might be good in the short term, but long term it's detrimental to our overall health and well-being. And of course, seeking out a counsellor that specialises in this niche and someone that can understand exactly what you're feeling and help guide you through processing and navigating all the feelings and emotions that you are experiencing. There are also free support lines out there for you to call on demand, for example, Lifeline.
Thanks, Gemma. That's been really informative.
Thank you, Melissa.
If you'd like to know more about how to manage the grief and loss of a parent and Gemma, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. After the break, we'll have another guest with an interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, mindset coach Sharee Shefket will be talking about how to recognise the signs of burnout.
Welcome back. Our second guest is mindset coach Sharee Shefket, and we'll be discussing how to recognise the signs of burnout. Welcome, Sharee.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I just want to know, what exactly is burnout?
Burnout is basically a mental and physical exhaustion, and it's usually work-related. So it's because the pressure of the work environment has got to that person and it's now affecting them mentally and physically. So there's obviously mental and physical symptoms with burnout. So they will have a symptom of apathy, they might be cynical, they will have some physical symptoms, especially if they're working 9 to 5. They might have a really great weekend and then that Sunday dread will come along, and so they start to feel like, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, because that build-up stress in their body is just overwhelming. So they have this also where they just don't care anymore, and it's like they're on autopilot in their work. So they're doing what they have to do, all the tasks, but they're not really present. Like if there's a meeting, for instance, they're just going through the motions of that task. They're not really adding value to their job. And so what happens is that over time, that person don't have any passion left, and they start to feel withdrawn. They might not want to talk to their co-workers. They will maybe more irritable and snap at their co-workers for asking a silly question. But there's also a lot of stigma around burnout. So I'll give you an example as well of how I experienced burnout, and later on in life how I was able to recognize the symptoms. So when I was about 20 years old, I was studying, I was working full-time, 2 jobs, the whole bit, trying to save up as much money as possible. That was my goal. And at the start, I was thriving. I was like, I could do this. I'm young. I've got the energy. I can do it all. But after some time, it obviously caught up with me, and I was literally exhausted. I would sleep and I'd get up and I felt still exhausted. I'm like, well, what is it? Like, why do I feel so tired? And I'm usually a very happy, smiley kind of person, and I just didn't have the energy. I was just doing the bare minimum I had to do because I was just so exhausted. And I recognised that this is just something's right. I need a rest. So I approached my manager at the time and said, listen, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm literally exhausted. I just feel like I need a break. I need to go do something fun and just get out of here. And I just had this emotional outburst, and that's another symptom. I was uncontrollably crying. I've never done that before, just started crying out of nowhere. But I was just so tired. And after that, I took that break. I made some drastic changes where I decided that money wasn't as important and my self-care was, and I left that position. So that's when I decided that I'm going to now make some changes, because I hadn't experienced burnout yet. I was just recognizing the symptoms, and that's what's really important.
It sounds quite similar to depression. So what is the difference between burnout, depression and stress?
Great question. So let's talk about stress first. So stress can be quite beneficial sometimes. So for example, if you've got a big task to do, like a dinner party, for instance, and you've got a bit of stress happening, it's just excitement a little bit, and it gets you under the pump, and it could be quite useful sometimes. When stress becomes chronic, that can lead to burnout, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Now let's look at depression. Now, depression is a mood disorder. So with depression, it's total apathy, a sense of hopelessness, a lot more physical and mental symptoms happening with depression, and it will seep through all areas of your life. Whereas burnout will be more confined into the workplace. It can also affect your personal life, but not so much. So someone who's, say, experiencing burnout might love their weekend, but they'll have that dread on that Sunday night lead back to work. Where someone who's depressed, it doesn't matter what day it is. And the difference between someone who's experiencing burnout and depression is that chronic stress. So I could take someone who is experiencing burnout and take them to the Greek islands, pamper them all day, have massages, cocktails, have some vitamin D, having that gorgeous weather, and they will start to go back into themselves and feel less stress. That nervous system starts calming down, and you'll say to them, okay, when you come back to work, we've offloaded half your tasks, so you're not going to feel as overwhelmed, and that person will be able to start to enjoy their career again. Not so much with depression. I could take them to the same person to the Greek islands. It doesn't really matter, that mood disorder. But burnout can lead to depression, something that needs to be concerned about, that we don't want that to happen at all.
So what are some tips then to prevent burnout?
The biggest prevention is self-care. When you're in a workplace, you might be allocated an allowance for a therapist, and a lot of workplaces now encourage, because they recognise that burnout is a problem in the workplace. So there are free resources if you have a 9-to-5 type of employment and have access to that therapist, which is fantastic, and I recommend utilising that. And you don't even have to tell your manager because of the stigma. You might just say, I just want to organise this session, and it's usually confidential, which is great in terms of arranging that session. Now, if you're self-employed, obviously you don't have those resources in place, so you can obviously find your own therapist, which is fantastic, but also implement a lot of self-care. What is it that you like to do? Do you connect with people? Are you doing any healthy habits? Are you taking regular breaks? Are you maybe doing some meditation? So have a look and see how much self-care are you doing during the week, because when you are self-employed, you become a little bit obsessed with your business to recognise the symptoms before it manifests into burnout. Prevention is key.
Thank you so much for your advice on that topic. If you'd like to know more about Sharee and the signs and symptoms of burnout, you can visit Sharee's webpage via our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. After the break, we'll be back with another guest and another interesting conversation.
Stay tuned. After the break, root cause and somatic therapist Nicole Healy will be talking about finding safety and peace for yourself when you have a loved one experiencing addiction. Welcome back. Our last guest is root cause and somatic therapist Nicole Healy. She will be talking about finding peace and safety for yourself when a loved one is experiencing addiction. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Is it possible to find safety and peace for yourself when a loved one is experiencing addiction?
It can be, but firstly I want to speak into addiction. So addiction is any behaviour that we have a craving for, that when we participate in that behaviour we feel relief, and we will continue to do it even if it has heavy consequences on other areas of our life. It's also important to note that addiction does have a spectrum, so on the lower end of that scale will be things like scrolling on your phone, maybe using food to comfort yourself. On the higher end of the spectrum is things like alcohol, drugs, gambling and porn that obviously have a heavier impact on your life and usually do carry quite a stigma. Now, I realised with myself as I went through my own healing journey that I was using food for a lot of my life to soothe myself. It was my addiction. And that started when I was 4 years old and my father passed away in a car accident. And we had a lot of people come to support us, to give us love, and they brought food. And of course, it's always the yummy treat type of food. So I was trying to recreate that love and support throughout my life. Anytime that I felt like I was anxious or overwhelmed or went through something challenging, food became my source of support. So when you think about addiction like that, I hope it helps you to maybe give yourself some compassion for maybe your own behaviours, and to hopefully see your loved one as addiction not being something that is bad about them, but it's a coping mechanism. Now, when we think about loving someone in addiction, it is a long-term traumatic situation, and you will most likely be going through trauma, and this will affect you in ways you don't maybe realise, like your nervous system, the way your body responds. Now, addiction is like a roller coaster. And we think about our loved one and it's crisis, things are okay, maybe they drop low, like a roller coaster, and it continues over and over, and it really has no, I guess, formal way that it goes. We don't know what each day is going to bring, so we're holding on, bracing ourselves, and usually us loved ones jump on that roller coaster with them, trying to support them, trying to be there for them. So can you imagine what happens to our nervous system, to our body, when we're on that roller coaster, riding the highs and the lows, but we don't know when they're going to happen? Our nervous system goes into a survival response.
So how can this affect our nervous system?
So typically there are 4 different states the nervous system can respond in, which will be fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And we don't choose which one we go to. This is just our body trying to survive. It can sometimes refer back to how we responded, maybe like me in childhood, but we don't really know. So there's no shame around what comes up for you, how you are adapting or surviving, but understanding that those responses are exactly how they sound. So freeze, you might feel stuck. You might feel unable to make decisions. You might set goals and not be able to do them. Flight might literally be that you will avoid everything, run away from it, get me out of here. Fight, going to fight. And that could look like your loved one has maybe just gambled or done the thing that's the problem, and you will find yourself in combative mode. And then fawn, we really are like a fawn. We're cowering, we're sinking away, we're usually in silence. And these responses are literally survival. So understanding that, I hope you can see that it is your body's way, your nervous system's way of trying to protect you. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But what we can do is actually start to give the nervous system support. And that can come in the form of seeking a somatic therapist. It can come from doing beautiful things like calming the body with the breath, taking a gentle walk, not trying to force the body to be one way or another, but just accepting it. Okay, I'm in flight mode. This is okay. This is where I am. How can I support myself to navigate this? Because when we label it with shame, it quite often can make it feel heavier and it can keep us stuck. So compassion to self, once again, is always crucial when we're supporting ourselves. It could also be the phone rings at 2 a.m. and you can feel your body go into maybe a freeze response. Too scared to answer it because you don't know what you're going to hear at the other end. Almost like if you think of yourself being on that addiction roller coaster, you're holding on to that guardrail for dear life, bracing yourself for whatever is going to come next. And there is a lot of chaos when we love someone in addiction. We know that. So being kind to yourself, if you can't follow through on goals you set, if you can't communicate calmly sometimes because you feel yourself go into that fight mode and you're overwhelmed, we can shame ourselves for those responses. But when we understand them, that's when we can start to nurture ourselves and give them the space that they need to maybe allow you to show up in ways that you want. So the phone rings at 2 a.m. and maybe you go, it's okay, it's just a phone call. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves. Your loved one does something that maybe initially you might feel a bit of anger or fear. You can calm yourself. Think, okay, how do I want to respond to this rather than react? We can give ourselves some space and some kindness.
So what advice do you have for someone who is looking to find that sense of safety and sense of peace while also loving someone who's going through addiction?
I think the first thing is going, it's okay. I'm in survival mode. I have been through a lot of things. I'm trying to navigate things in a way that are helping me get through really challenging situation that we didn't choose to be in. And then looking outside of ourselves, seeking professional support, maybe looking into somatic support as another beautiful way to help yourself. And once again, always just being kind to you, giving yourself some grace and nurturing the parts of you that maybe need it the most, which is usually the parts that are screaming at us. Don't shame them. Try to give them some love.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you would like to learn more about finding safety and peace for yourself whilst loving someone who is experiencing addiction, or find out more about Nicole, you can visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and we'll say goodbye until next week.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.